The NFL is in full swing as we gear up for week 2. Unfortunately, with football comes injuries. And whether it's for your fantasy team or the betting space, you got to know which guys you can trust and which guys you need to fade. Welcome to the NFL Week 2 Injury Report. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus. What is up, folks? I'm your host here, the DGen Doc, and of course, we're talking injuries because you can't have football without injuries, unfortunately, and it's part of the game that we have to take into account here. So the way this is going to work is we're going to do an in-depth deep dive on some IDP injuries. That's right, there's a lot about some offensive guys and the fancy players and the big names, but we're doing some deep dives for you IDP, you defensive folks that we're going to be getting into. So way this is going to work, we're going to roll through. We've got about 6, 7, 8 guys that we're going to talk about. Got to go talk about, hey, what's the injury? What can we expect this week? Are they going to be out there, and should I have them in my lineup? Then we'll also talk a little bit at the end. I'll do a quick offensive rundown because I know people like both. So we're going to mainly focus on the defensive side today. Talk guys like Julian Blackmon, Terrion Arnold, Cashman, Micah Parsons, big names like that, guys that I know are on your teams, and you're wondering, should I roster this guy? Should I start him, or is he a sit for me this week? And then at the end, we'll do a quick offensive rundown. I'll go just kind of give you the highlights, wave tops as we call it. So without further ado, it is our NFL Week 2 injury report. Did this series, started it last week here. If you wanted, I went through some guys that started the season on the PUP or the short-term IR, meaning they're going to miss a minimum of 4 games. I'm not going to repeat through those names again, so check that out if you want to know, hey, who's starting the season on the PUP. Again, they're not going to be eligible to return until week 5 at minimum. But we're solely focused on week 2, and we're going to start with Dallas Cowboys cornerback Duran Bland. This is kind of a bit of a surprise. Bland played the entire game. NFL kickoff week 1, Thursday night against the Eagles. Played all the snaps, played pretty well, actually. And it looks like in practice on Monday, he suffered a foot injury that is going to keep him out multiple weeks. Now, we don't have all the information on this injury. No specific diagnosis has been given, but they have said, hey, he's definitely out this week and likely out multiple weeks. Now, Duran Bland, if we think back to last year, he missed 7 games with a foot stress fracture, a stress fracture in his foot, one of the bones in his foot, a fracture in the on the left side. Now, thankfully, this is not a re-injury of that because that would potentially be season-threatening. This is a injury to his right foot. So again, we don't know the specifics, but we at least know it's not considered to be as serious as his injury last year, which kept him out for half the season, and is not on the same side even. So don't know all the specifics, but what we do know is that Bland is out this week, and he's likely out multiple weeks. So someone that you're going to want to obviously not have in your lineup heading to Sunday and then kind of monitor. Doesn't seem like they're strongly considering putting him on the IR, which would help us as fantasy players because you get to put him in your IR slot if you have one. But it does seem like he's going to be out multiple weeks. So someone you cannot trust in your lineups come Sunday when the Cowboys take on the Giants. Then we have next up defensive tackle, newcomer to the team, Carolina Panthers D tackle Tershawn Wharton, one of the big free agency moves coming over from the Chiefs. He's dealing with the hamstring strain, and this one seems fairly serious because they already said he's expected to miss several weeks. They said this, I'm recording this Thursday, September 11th. They said this basically right after the game when they talked about how bad it is. Typically, if a guy is ruled out right away, that's not a good sign. So let's talk about, hamstring strain. What is it, and what are the different levels or grades, as we call them, talking about severity. So a hamstring strain just refers to your hamstring muscle on the back of your thigh. It's actually made up of 3 different muscles there. It's damage to that muscle in some sort of way. And these grades just kind of is a way to quantify how much damage is done. So grade 1 is pretty minor, some damage, a little bit of tearing. So any strain, any damage is micro tearing in the muscle. But as you can see, grade 1 is not as much. Grade 2 is a moderate level. And then grade 3 is a full tear. So we know it's not a grade 3 because full tear, there's no way you're repairing that without surgery. So he would know he would have to get surgery, probably be season ending. Think back to an injury like Dak Prescott last year. That was kind of what caused him to be out for the season. Now, grade 1 is typically around a 2 to 4 week recovery timeline. The way that they were talking, saying he's going to miss several weeks, makes me think it's more of a grade 2, which is that moderate level injury. That is typically a 4 to 6 week recovery timeline. Now, hamstring injuries they suck. They are one of the most burdensome injuries in the NFL. They're especially difficult in season because it's one of those injuries that you cannot rush because they have a high re-injury rate. And a lot of the times, in order to test the hamstring muscle, you kind of just have to run. And it really doesn't get fully stretched until you maximally sprint. So you're gonna, another part of it is these guys are professional athletes. They're used to their body being able to do extraordinary things, and the hamstring muscle, it's gonna feel like it's healed before it actually is. If you've had a hamstring strain, you probably dealt with this. Hopefully your physical therapist or your doc told you, hey, it's gonna feel like it's better before it's ready to be a full go. So that's where you have to be careful, because these guys are going to say, hey, I feel good, but you know that if they go out there and kind of go full blow, you're going to get a re-injury. And the bad thing about a re-injury with hamstrings and really any soft tissue injuries, whenever you have a re-injury, you're taking already damaged muscle and then damaging it even more, which means we're taking something that could, take a couple weeks to recover to now stretch it out to months. So I'm not expecting Tershawn Wharton to be back, at least until 4 weeks out, which obviously he can be an IR candidate as well. I was looking at the practice report today. Yesterday he did not practice, did not see him out there today. So I'm expecting Wharton to be out multiple weeks as well. It's similar to an injury we're going to talk about a little bit later. Actually, let's just get right into it. Blake Cashman, Minnesota Vikings linebacker. We saw him play Monday Night Football, help lead that comeback against the Bears there. In a play where he was chasing down Caleb Williams, he kind of came through unblocked, was hoping for the sack, and Williams kind of outran him to the corner. You saw him maximally sprinting, trying to, get to Williams as fast as he could. And then he kind of pulled up in the classic, oh, shoot, my hamstring's done. And he was ruled out immediately, which is, again, not a good sign. And it leads that it's going to be a little bit more damage. Now, he was actually placed on the IR today. So he is out a minimum of 4 games, could return. The earliest would be, week 5 there. Or excuse me, week 6 would be his earliest return timeline. But again, based on, hey, it's not a grade 3, because we would know he would have to get surgery. It would be season threatening. It's likely a grade 2, again, that 4 to 6 week recovery timeline. So Wharton wasn't placed on the IR, at least not yet. So whether, sometimes teams feel that, hey, maybe we can get him back in 3 weeks, depending on how much damage is there. Obviously, the Vikings saw the amount of damage on the MRI and said, hey, let's just put him on the IR, allow him to fully recover and solely focus on rehab and not have to worry about, hey, I need to return. Wharton, again, they said he's expected to miss several weeks initially. They clearly think that if they're, again, you never know with these teams. Sometimes they wait to put somebody on IR. Sometimes they are okay with, I don't want to say wasting the roster spot, but obviously if he's not on IR, he takes up a spot on the active roster. So I'm curious to see what the Carolina Panthers do. If they don't put him on IR, there's a chance he could return in 3 weeks. Maybe, I think 2 weeks would be really pushing it and is kind of very risky. But obviously the Vikings decided, hey, Cashman, just take this time to recover. So do not expect him back by the earliest week 6. And I could definitely see that pushed back into week 8 there. Let's talk about some positive news, because we don't always get to do that on the injury front here. Let's talk Detroit Lions cornerback Terrion Arnold. Now, this was one that was a little bit scary for Lions fans and people who have him in fantasy, I'm sure, because he got ruled out of the game week 1 and fairly quickly. So, again, your line of thinking when guys don't really try to play through it and they're immediately ruled out is, hey, man, this must be pretty serious. But reports actually came out yesterday on Wednesday that it was not believed to be that serious, and he was day-to-day. And then he actually had a full practice. So not even limited, which would have been a great sign, but a full practice participant. I mean, that's about as good as it can get. So it was more just a scare. Thankfully, more of that grade 1 type. So with a groin strain, a groin is a little bit of an umbrella term. It essentially is kind of, it could mean lower abdominal muscles or your inner hip muscles, what we call your adductor muscles. Typically, a lot of the times, people use it synonymously with adductor. They usually refer to the inner hip, but sometimes it can be the lower abs. Again, groin is kind of an umbrella term to kind of mean that area, less so what specific muscles are involved there. But good news here. Again, him practicing on Wednesday is great news for his likelihood of being available and not missing really any time other than the time he missed in week 1. And that game was kind of already out of hand for the Lions at that point. All right. Let's stick in the secondary and let's head over to New Orleans and talk about safety Julian Blackmon, a free agent addition for a team that, Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, kind of unexpectedly retired a couple weeks before the season. Maybe he saw what this Saints team was looking like and was like, man, I think I'd rather sit on the couch than play with this team. Although they didn't look terrible week 1, only a 7-point loss to the Arizona Cardinals at home. Now, a decent part of that secondary was Julian Blackmon coming in off free agency, making an immediate impact, being a starter for them. And unfortunately, looks like he had season-ending labral tear surgery. So your labrum, you have 2 labrums. Well, you have 4. But 2 on each side. You have one in your shoulder and one in your hip. This is speaking to his shoulder. So you have your humerus, your shoulder bone. It's kind of that ball and socket. The glenoid is that socket there. And the labrum is kind of that protective piece around that when it's damaged can be very, very painful. Now, sometimes they can be played through. So a lot of times when you get a labral tear is when you get some type of shoulder, either subluxation or dislocation. What that just means is, the shoulder is supposed to be in a certain place, and when you moves out of that place, it sublux, or if it moves out and comes back, it's a subluxation. If it moves out completely, it's a dislocation. So a lot of times that moving, that rubbing on the labrum can cause that tearing. Now, sometimes you get lucky and there's not a lot of damage done, and you kind of avoid that, and you don't have to get surgery and you can rehab. We're going to talk about a guy a little bit later on the offensive side of the ball, and Xavier Worthy, very public injury. Travis Kelce basically shouldered him, and they ran in shoulder short, and his shoulder popped out. And, his was one dislocated. They had to put it back in, and it looks like he's going to try to rehab through it, where Blackmon, unfortunately, sometimes it's based on the location of the tear in the labrum, the size, what they're able to do. Unfortunately, better for his long-term health, but he's going to have surgery. He already had it this week, actually, and his season is likely over. You're talking months, at least, three months there typically. And unless the Saints miraculously make a deep playoff run, at least for fantasy, I think Julian Blackmon is safe to say he's done for the season. Very unfortunate, again, kind of one of those flyer guys who came in off the streets and really kind of made an impact for them and was a starter for that team. So I think the safety Sanker is who Kellen Moore, head coach, he named him by name as, hey, he's gonna replace them there. So that rookie there, if that's someone you're looking to pick up, because the Saints is going to be a team from defensive stat side of the ball where they're going to let up a lot, and the safety is going to have to make a lot of plays. That's usually not a good thing team-wise if your safety is having to make a ton of tackles, assuming he's not someone that plays down in the box like a Jamal Adams or something like that. But the Saints safety position could be one that gets a lot of points because there's a lot of tackles and things he's having to clean up on the back end. So Sanker might be someone you want to look into, see how he plays this first week as they go up against this San Francisco team that is very beat up in their own right. All right, let's get over to my New York Football Giants. Of course, if we're talking the Giants, we can't be talking positive news. Linebacker Micah McFadden, inside linebacker who is, really kind of on the rise and was set to have a really big season for them. Someone who could easily go over 100 tackles this year. He was carted off in the first game, which obviously getting carted off is never a good thing. Now, initial reports were that, it was a foot ankle injury and that the x-rays were negative. So, which is great, meaning there's no fracture. However, not out of the woods there. As my cat is saying hello. Not out of the woods there because further imaging showed that it is going to be a serious injury. Now, the specific injury timeline and the specific diagnosis has not been kind of released yet. The Giants and Dable typically don't release a ton, but they basically said it's going to be significant time. They're hoping it's not season ending, But obviously, fantasy wise, he's someone that you maybe can put him on the IR if you want to stash him for that long, but likely as a drop candidate just because he's going to miss, at this point, probably months, not weeks. So again, we don't have all the information there. They haven't divulged that, and I'm not sure maybe when they officially put him on the IR, because he has not technically gone on the IR yet. But all reports are saying that, hey, although no fracture, negative X-rays, this is a significant injury. Do not expect McFadden to be out there anytime soon. Obviously, Bobby Okereke is going to have to try to carry the load here as they figure out that Shane Bone defense. Abdul Carter is a guy who, for whatever reason, in my opinion, asinine reasons, only got 50% of snaps in week one. He's someone who played inside linebacker at the college level at Penn State. So do they stick him here? Giants got some things to figure out there. I think this week it's going to be kind of hard to figure out who exactly is going to be that plug and play. It could be, Masua there, but tough loss. And unfortunately, McFadden's going to be out for several weeks, if not the entire season. All right. Now we're moving on to another surprise injury in Buffalo. Ed Oliver, defensive tackle for the Buffalo Bills. So he played in week one, that crazy Sunday Night Football game against the Ravens, and where they had this massive comeback. Not really because of the defense, I guess you could say, forcing that fumble on Derrick Henry. But Ed Oliver, a big piece on the interior line. He practiced on Wednesday, was completely fine, and then it looks like he must have suffered an injury on Wednesday because he was seen in a boot and a scooter this morning. So a walking boot and a scooter, which is never really a good sign. And he did not practice today. So this is definitely one to monitor. Obviously, sometimes during the season, especially, these teams are very precautionary, and when they bring out the boot, and they'll just, hey, any type of injury you're dealing with, I even for whether it be turf toe or whether it be something like a calf strain or plantar fasciitis, we've seen teams use the boot there. So it's not definitely, a sign that there's a fracture or something going on, but it is obviously not a good sign. So Ed Oliver is someone you want to keep your eyes peeled. We haven't gotten all the information on what the injury specifically is, what he's dealing with, because it seemed to happen in practice on Wednesdays. But for this week, not really a good sign that he's not practicing on Thursday, and that he's, again, was seen in a boot and a walking scooter. So you want to keep a close eye on Ed Oliver, but at this point, it's hard to expect him to be out there. All right, we've got a couple more injuries to get through. Let's get to a new one we haven't talked about this season, at least yet. Andrew Van Ginkel, the guy who is an absolute mastermind at reading screens. We saw him almost take one back against the Chicago Bears. In this one, I mean, I loved it. It's hard to not love the way that Andrew Van Ginkel plays football. He's so instinctive and kind of does everything for the Vikings, and always kind of scratching my head at why the Dolphins let him leave that locker room. But he's found a great home in Minnesota. But unfortunately, despite, I watched that game, I don't remember him coming out of the game, but it looks like he picked up a concussion at some point, which isn't completely abnormal. It is kind of rare that typically they're getting really good at finding a spotter, and if there's any type of potentially concussion-causing trauma or injury, they have the spotter and they have to get checked out by the independent neurologist. But he was added to the injury report, did not practice yesterday, Wednesday, with a concussion. He's in the concussion protocol. Now, concussions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about concussions. Concussions are one of those injuries where we still, as medical professionals, do not have all the answers. Well, just, because it has to affect the brain, and we don't have all the answers with the brain. But what we do know is it's a disruption of energy within the brain, right? So it's brain into kind of a chaotic state where things are jumbled around. And what we really do know is that it is imperative when someone suffers a concussion that they get out of the game, because your brain is and your head is in a very fragile state, to where if you suffer, a second concussion or another traumatic brain injury, it can be fatal. So that's one of the things why immediately, if there's concussion suspicion, you pull them out and you get tested. And if there's any positive tests, you pull them out for the game. So that is something the NFL is getting better at. Now, their concussion protocol. So the way you have to pass the concussion protocols are essentially a 5-step protocol. You need to have a limited practice and then essentially a full practice where you can, a lot of what concussion is, as far as rehab wise, is how does someone respond to the stimulus I'm giving to them, right? So first you want to make sure, okay, how does the person respond with the limited practice to just running around and, getting their cardiovascular system up and some type of essentially exercise, right? How do they respond to that? Are they getting headaches? Are they getting light sensitivity? Things like that. Okay, if they pass that level, okay, how do they respond to contact, which is where the full practice comes in. So typically, now Thursday is the key practice. Now the NFL is kind of funny in the way that they handle concussions. Um, in the past, a lot of the times people would get a concussion on Sunday and they would be back out there playing the next Sunday. Now, the past couple seasons, especially early in the season, it was like everyone who gets a concussion is automatically out that week and then they have a shot to play the next week. So it's kind of hard. This is being week one. He's one of the biggest names to have a concussion this week. We don't know how the NFL is going to play this year. Again, in the seasons past, it could sometimes take typically, 7 days recovery is kind of normal. Like you can see that. Now, technically, he's coming off a shorter week because they did play on Monday night. So now he's got 6 days, which makes this even more of an uphill climb. But usually that Thursday night or Thursday practice is the key. If they are not practicing by Thursday, typically they do not play that week. Now, again, sometimes in special cases, it's happened to Trevor Lawrence in the past, a couple, usually quarterbacks, where they will have them practice in a limited fashion on Friday and then hold a special workout, essentially, where they run them through a full practice and then they can get them cleared. Again, a little bit wishy-washy with the NFL concussion protocol. I understand they're trying to do their best and things like that, but it's always interesting to see how they handle it, especially early in the season. Past couple seasons, early in the season, almost everybody with a concussion sat out at least 1 week. In the past, that was not the case. Even last year, near the end of the season, not the case. So really kind of truly questionable. And it can make sense because concussion symptoms and recovery timelines are so variable based on how that person responds. So all this to say, Van Ginkel did not practice on Wednesday. He's only got 6 days, from Monday night to Sunday night to playing. If he does not practice today on Thursday, it is very unlikely that he plays on Sunday. All right, last one I'm going to briefly touch on because we did more of an in-depth deep dive last episode, but it's Micah Parsons, who is potentially going to play tonight, Thursday Night Football, the new Packers edition here. He's got that L4, L5, which speaks to the level in the spine, the lumbar vertebrae 4 and 5, the facet joint irritation in between those two levels. Now, fancy talk for saying, structurally, nothing broken, nothing permanently damaged, but it's irritated, right? It's a bruise, essentially. It's a little bit of damage going on, but not something that is so far gone it can't be helped this season or anything like that. Limited practice, questionable, kind of very similar on a short week coming off of just playing on Sunday, playing, I think 40% of the snaps or something like that. Did pick up a sack, did look pretty explosive and well. I would expect something similar. I would expect him to play, but play with limited snaps. Now, in a couple hours, we'll find out if he's going to play when the inactive comes out. I think the expectation is a similar game plan. He's going to be active. He's going to play, maybe 50% of the snaps. Absolutely, he could have an impact. He could get a sack for you like he did last week, but it is a risky play because of the snap count, right? So I expect him to be on a snap count, but totally understandable if you do start him because it's Micah Parsons and he's one of the best players in the NFL. So it's kind of, again, same thing as last week. You're coming off a short week. He looked pretty good last week, although limited. I would expect the snaps to still be limited. Assuming everything goes well and he gets through this week 3 is where it's kind of like he should be full go. He's going to be coming off extended rest, and you definitely want to, easy, don't have to think about it, set and forget Micah Parsons in your lineup. All right, folks, I went through several big names on the injury report on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to do a quick quick offensive rundown, because I know that most of you, if you're probably playing IDP, you're probably playing regular football as well. So I will give you a quick update there. So Chiefs wide receiver Xavier Worthy, shoulder dislocation, popped out, similar to what happened with Julian Blackmon, but in this case, they are going to try to rehab. They're not considering surgery. He was actually at practice today on Thursday. Now, I still think he's a long shot for this week. He can run around. There's nothing wrong with his legs. He can be out there, but is he cleared for contact? It's going to be trying to catch a ball and landing on that shoulder, and it's going to be taking hits to that right shoulder. That is what's going to kind of decide if it's going to pop out again. If it pops out again, it's likely going to be labral surgery, season-ending surgery. So it's a high re-injury risk. So I don't think this week, I don't think he's going to play. And even if he does, it's a really big risk reward. Obviously, he's their best wide receiver without Rashee Rice serving that suspension. So I'm not expecting him to be out there, but he did practice today. So there is a chance. Whether he's active or not, it's a high risk play. 49ers tight end George Kittle, hamstring strain, very similar to what we talked about with Blake Cashman. Grade 2, 4 to 6 week recovery timeline on the IR, going to be out a minimum of 4 weeks. His quarterback, Brock Purdy, come out today. He's dealing with a turf toe injury. He's expected out between 2 and 5 weeks. These are nasty injuries. It refers to ligaments in your big toe. It's a nagging injury. If you try to return too soon, it's going to continue to nag for the rest of the season, and it's going to limit his mobility. So he's going to be out at least 2 weeks. And then from there, it's how is he responding? How are things going? So it's the Mac Jones show for a little while. Guys like Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, CMC, how does this affect them? You got to kind of think about the backup quarterback. I will say Mac Jones was able to deliver to Brian Thomas Jr. a ton as the backup in Jacksonville last year. So maybe that's Ricky Pearsall. Maybe that's Juwan Jennings. He seems to kind of be able to lock in on one going for the 49ers. Raiders tight end Brock Bowers came out of the game with a knee injury last week. Thankfully, it sounds just precautionary. After the game, he told reporters that he's fine. He was kind of walking around fine without a limp. No real major news coming out of Las Vegas there. They technically have their first practice today because they play on Monday night. So he gets an extra bit of rest there. But all reports at this point sounds like Bowers is going to be good to go for this week. But obviously you want to check those practice reports. As long as he's practicing by Friday, he should be good to go. And then more positive news. Falcons wide receiver Drake London, AC sprain, acromioclavicular joint, basically your clavicle, collarbone, and your acromion coming off your shoulder. So kind of that, you can feel it, kind of that point that drops out there. It landed hard on his shoulder. It's sprained, typically in mild cases. Guys can play through this. It's more pain management thing. If you have him in your lineup, you should start him. They're going to target him often. He's got a little bit of an injury risk. If he lands exactly on that shoulder again in the same way, that's going to not feel great. But other than that, Drake London should be good to go. And then finally, Bucs wide receiver Chris Godwin, ankle dislocation. Brutal injury last year against the Ravens. We all saw it. Your ankle is not supposed to be going that way. He's had 2 surgeries now to kind of get it working. He returned to practice today, which is an awesome sign to see. However, we got to pump the brakes there. This is just kind of part of his rehab process. They're still not expecting him to play until week 5 at the earliest. And I still have questions on what he's going to look like when he comes back. Obviously, you got Mike Evans, you got Emeka Egbuka, Sterling Shepard stepping in there, Cade Otton, Bucky Irving. They have enough weapons to kind of be good until he's ready to go. But I would not expect a whole ton from Chris Godwin until really the back half of the season, week 8 and on. All right, folks, that is your NFL Week 2 injury report. It's the season. It's starting. There's a ton of injuries. If there's anyone that I didn't get to, you can always comment underneath. I can give you my quick thoughts. Or probably the best way, honestly, is to follow me on X at the DGenDoc. That's where I'm posting most of the up-to-date, hey, this guy practiced today, this guy didn't. So if you really want your up-to-the-minute injury info, go ahead and give me a follow at the DGenDoc there. But hey, again, new series. So not only am I open to what guys you want me to talk about, open to the format here, just trying to get the information out to you guys to be able to give you an advantage over your league mates and secure some W's this fantasy football season. So from the DGenDoc here at IDP Plus, I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.